Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, my team Hannah, Sarah, Lynn, Gareth and myself, Richard, will be presenting to you our innovative solution called Food Cycles. To begin with, we'll go through a brief overview of the problem. We'll outline the Food Cycle solution. We'll then break down how Food Cycles works, apply this to a real-life situation, provide a feasibility study of how Food Cycles works, and we'll sum up with a conclusion. One of Sydney's biggest issues today is managing the waste that we produce in the ever-decreasing space that we have available without further encroaching on our local arable land. Currently, there are very limited options for organic waste disposal within the Sydney region, which over the past has resulted in it being sent to landfill. To give you an idea of the figures that we're talking about, on average, an Australian produces 2.1 tonne of waste a year. 47% of that is organic waste. That means for 1,000 Australians, it's the equivalent of 21 full shipping containers of organic waste that is being sent to landfill per annum. Imagine we could divert this 21 full shipping containers of organic waste from landfill and even possibly reuse it on the site for which it would have come from. The answer to that is Food Cycles. Food Cycles is a scalable process that aligns stakeholder values to facilitate collection and then conversion of organic waste to a material that can be used to grow food locally. To show you how Food Cycles works, we're going to apply this to a new development that is about to commence in Macquarie Park.
Our Food Cycles precinct, Lachlan's Line, is a mixed-use, high-density development located in Macquarie Park. This new urban development has a concept plan for 860 apartments and 6,000 square metres of retail space. The centrepiece for this site is the Central Park, which will be the foundation for Food Cycles. This Food Cycle precinct is close to schools, Macquarie University and hospital, and in both new and established communities. The precinct will have just over 2,200 residents and produce 2,300 tonnes of organic waste a year. One of the most important aspects of Food Cycles is how we collect all that organic waste produced by the residents. It is essential that any collection system we choose is simple, convenient and easy for the residents to use. So for our precinct, we've chosen to install designated chutes on each level of the apartment buildings. This allows the residents to simply walk out of their front door, put their waste down the chute, and it's automatically sent to the composting unit. Dedicated biodegradable cornstarch bags will be provided to the residents and local businesses for their food waste. This will help prevent non-organic contamination and aid in keeping the chutes nice and clean. The Food Cycles treatment system comprises of a vertical composting unit combined with a macerator, which will decompose all the organic matter, including meat and garden wastes. The garden wastes and the cornstarch bags will actually provide the 20% green waste required for ideal decomposition, which will allow our system to reduce all the waste by 60% of its original volume in just 7 to 14 days. The composting unit has a small footprint, so it can be installed in either a building's basement or externally, depending on the requirements of the site. And it's expandable, so it can accommodate for any future growth by simply combining more units. Our system does not require any mixing, it is naturally aerated, and it produces its own heat, which destroys any pathogens that are present in the waste. This heat also has the potential to be collected and captured and used for the precinct heating if it's desired. The Food Cycles unit produces a nitrogen-rich moist compost that can be suitable for many uses, including farming, top-up soil and landscaping, just to name a few.
The next step to implementing the Food Cycle solution is to take the compost we produce and use it to grow food locally. Local food production will be achieved through a combination of initiatives, including community gardens, rooftop gardens, and city farms. We recognise that Food Cycles will be unable to support the entire food production needs of the precinct. However, creating local food opportunities will help build understanding of how food is produced, increase awareness, and provide a better understanding of food seasonality. Food Cycles is a flexible model, and there are a number of management scheme options available that can be tailored to a precinct. Specifically, at Lachlan's Line, we'll use 1/5 of the public open space to create a large community garden of approximately 4,000 square metres in size. The garden will use 75% of the compost generated from our system and can yield 5 tonnes of produce per growing season. The produce can then be sold at weekly growers markets and utilised by local cafes and restaurants. The ongoing management of the community garden will be supported by a full-time food cycles coordinator to oversee a network of community volunteers. With waste management and food production covered, the final element of creating the food cycles loop is getting the community actively involved. We want the community to feel empowered and to take ownership of the waste outputs of the precinct. As part of Food Cycles, we will develop a comprehensive strategy for community involvement to ensure the long-term success of the system. Our education strategy will include resident workshops on organic waste disposal, local composting and farming demonstrations run throughout the year, partnering with local schools for youth involvement and educational programs, community newsletters, and an online food cycle forum with smartphone capability. Lastly, we will market the financial benefit of the food cycle system, being the long-term cost savings achieved from zero organic waste outputs from the precinct.
The cost of sending waste to landfill within the Sydney area is approximately $300 per tonne. A precinct the size of our food cycle example will spend $1.4 million annually on waste disposal. Therefore, with local council buy-in to our solution and subsequently reducing the waste charges for residents, with 47% of all waste now treated on site, we can save $700,000 in landfill costs. Food Cycle utilises this cost saving to fund our waste management and food production system, including the initial outlay for the composting units, Food Cycle coordinator salary, operational costs and equipment. To illustrate the expense of our system, we have shown the cost per tonne over the first 3 years with and without Food Cycles. The initial expenditure cost will be averaged over the first 2 years of the system. As the figure shows, although our system is initially more expensive, by the third year, Food Cycle is cheaper than traditional landfill costs. Food Cycles is a holistic organic waste solution on a precinct scale, which incorporates on-site collection, treatment, and food production. With the Food Cycle system, zero organic waste is sent to landfill. Our vertical compost units have the capability to treat all organic waste produced within the precinct. Food Cycles brings the community together in an urban environment through the integration of a community garden, educational workshops, and incorporating external stakeholders surrounding a new high-density development. Residents of Food Cycle will also have an increased connection to food sources, with the incorporation of community gardens to provide landscape spaces, enabling understanding of food production techniques and seasonality. Finally, Food Cycles is a scalable solution that can be applied to both new and existing communities with and around the Greater Sydney region. These 5 key benefits show why Food Cycle is an economic and sustainable solution for Sydney's waste management and food production future. Food Cycles can create the urban food loop.
It certainly struck me as, there was a good business case in terms of implementation for that model. And I like the way you'd mix some technology with some community processes, which I think in that environment is pretty important. Let me just, add 2 quick comments. I actually was involved in a sustainability challenge for schools, and kids were trying to design houses that would collect organic waste. And this one kid told me that his father would never leave the house to put organic waste in a bin outside, and he designed something that was almost next to his lounge chair that was a chute inside the house straight out into the bin. So I think there's a challenge about getting people to put their stuff basically outside their apartment. And the other point I've just spent a bit of time in New York with a friend that's involved in the community garden movement, and she reckons you need to have the diplomatic skills of the head of the UN to actually sometimes deal with the politics of community gardens. But I don't want to sound too negative, but I thought the whole community garden thing was an interesting addition to a great idea. So thank you.
Tim?
Thanks. That's a great pitch. It's a really, really good pitch. I'd be sold on the idea fairly quickly, I've got to say. I won't get into too much of the technology, etc., because I frankly don't understand it. But in terms of the business case itself and bringing home an implementation plan, well done on that. Having the foresight to sort of say we'll be a bit of a loss leader in year one, but wait around for a couple of years and we'll turn it around. That's the type of thing you need, and that's the type of thing when you're doing a pitch like that people like to see in terms of actually seeing these things brought home commercially. In terms of setting the scene and having the customers at the centre as well, I have to put in a plug for our organisation because that is our motto, and you did that, and that's a really, really important, powerful message. That bringing that down to a case study and an example sort of immediately allows us to sort of really visualise it quite quickly. So very well done on that, but a good collaborative pitch, so congratulations.